Good afternoon to all past, present and future friends and people who probably will never watch this, but whatever. I want to make a video on a few things. It's been a long time. I've recorded a few videos before, but I've never published any on YouTube, so I hope this will be the one. I haven't prepared quite a few things. Mainly, I'm gonna prepare some coffee right on the table. I have something to do that. This is the thing here. I'm sure some of you know what this is. So, and obviously, pipe. This is Dunhill Flake. It's straight Virginia. It's pretty fucking good. Okay, let me just prepare it. So, on the topics. First and foremost, some of you may know, I'm sure most don't because, you know, we're not friends. But I was working for a charity / association for quite a while, for 8 months. So maybe not quite a while for some people, but for me it was quite a while. In fact, it was my longest, the longest time I've been employed, you know. So quite the achievement. Sorry, just give me a sec. Alright, so I was going to stink up the room, but I wanted to do that. So now I decided to not renew my contract for another 4 months. Even though they really wanted me to, which is appreciated, you know, of course. But no, thank you. I did not like the job. I did quite a few things, quite a good bunch of things, very different things. But ultimately, I didn't like it for a few reasons. First off, I didn't feel like I was doing anything useful. That's the first thing. Second, the fact that I was on salary, that was wage-cock, did not sit right with me at some point. And now it's not really the case. Now I have a few topics I want to talk about. Mainly because I haven't taken time to sit down and really think about things. So I'm gonna use this video as an opportunity to do that and to develop my thoughts before I go in a few weeks out in the mountains for about a week. So lately, I've been on rereading, so reading it for the second time now, a book that goes against trans-humanism. Not transgender people, but trans-humanism. However, interestingly enough, transgender is part of this whole trans-humanism debacle. Sorry. For reasons that actually make some sense in context. However, I won't be touching upon that, probably, anyway, here. So the bullet point I've put is anti-humanism of humanists / trans-humanists. So one thing to note, is that humanists are precursors to trans-humanists. I believe, if I remember my history correctly, they were from during the period of the lmao, and their goal was to take the human and make it make it better. And so there are some ideas on how to do that, but obviously none of that took any real effect up until industrialization took place in Europe and then the entire world, which is the root of our modern problems, funnily enough, is industrialization. It's around, I don't remember if it's in between the First and Second World War or during the Cold War that trans-humanists rose to prominence. I think it was during the Cold War, but I'm very much uncertain about that, so I will not say anything. So that was a very quick history of how they came about. It's just not even quick, it's just very much surface level. Like when they came about, rather, not how. Because how is a whole another story, and I'm not going to cover it because I don't remember, and I don't have the book with me, and I don't have another book that would have been useful to use for that, which would have been useful. However, I can maybe talk about how it came to be, because for all intents and purposes, technology in modern sense, where high technology is a thing, religion, Christianity. Actually, I won't touch on it. There's no point. But it's for another video, really. The rise, because it's just a symptom of a lot of the things. However, we have to tie it into the history of humanity as it stands today, Western civilization and Christianity / Islam. However, you can probably put Islam aside because Christianity very much is entangled with Islam. So one tends to apply for the other. So I mainly talk about what's more correct, I would say, because Islam is more important than the other guy, honestly. So yeah, that's the trans-humanists are trying to fill the void left by shattered belief, the void that of a sense, not the sense of purpose, but rather a sense that the human was meant to be more than it is really. Because through religion, you see that through the realm of spiritual exaltation, or for Christianity, because that's basically the only one I know, it was sainthood or post-death ascension to heaven. Alright, it's ready. You can see it's pretty black now. Just a little thing that I always put some salt, some sea salt, in my coffee to remove the bitterness of it. When I do quite a bit of it, just more than a mug of coffee, so for 2-3 people, or 4, you should take less for everyone. I put some cinnamon in it, just a little bit, a pinch or 2, and it does improve, I think, the flavor a bit. If you put too much, the cinnamon just takes over, but just having a bit of cinnamon helps, I think. That was a recommendation by a Scottish friend of mine. Shout out to Mensch, whom I saw, by the way, let me be clear. I went to Scotland. There you go. Fuck, it's really fucking black. Holy shit. How am I gonna clear that shit up? Wow. Cool. I also put some honey to replace the sugar. So there's a few calories in it. And I'm not a fan of very pure black coffee, you know. Woody honey, if you prefer. It's quite nice with coffee, I have to say. It's not too sweet, you know. It has, it's pretty good. It goes together very well. I would recommend trying that if you want. So I was trans-humanist. Yeah, filling the void. All of that. So that's an introduction, I guess. So they're trying to bring the purpose of the exaltation that's not gonna be spiritual anymore, and then they claim, keyword claim, that this will be brought about by technology, whereas the human is no longer human, but he's more than human. He can achieve that desired outcome that humanists had centuries ago. What was it though? Better mental capacity, better physique, stronger physically, mentally, more emotionally stable, that's the thing. So yeah, smarter, stronger, more stoic then, that would be for more emotionally stable. And maybe more discipline, but I don't know, with mental fortitude, it's something you can. But that's the thing, though. All of that you can learn. But the thing with transhumanists is, I think they don't want to learn. They don't want to take the time to learn how to be better. They want to bring this about through technology, and they, interestingly enough, they take this ambitions of theirs and project it to humanity as a whole, like everyone wants the same as them because they think the human is impatient, is not patient enough. Well, so that's just them, actually. I'm sure a lot of people like this, but there's also an interesting point to make here before I go on to the problem of time with transhumanists, is their projection of their impatience. The death of God and the rise of hedonistical ideals and conformist, protective systems that link each other through industrialization and interconnectivity, interdependence with modernity and other technological systems, is that the human is relegated to a place of obsolescence, and it is more and more dependent on those codependent systems. It's kind of maybe not too complex, but it's a bit complex to get it. I hope I'm doing it a fair enough explanation. It's not really an explanation, it's laying the ground around, you know. If you need to take time, please do take the time. It took me quite a few tries to actually understand what I was reading, what I was actually thinking, and what I understood. So this is what I'm understanding now. Is that those entire modern systems that were built on the ground of industries, of the industrialization of civilization, is that instead of using tools as helpers, tools became this huge monolith that everyone clings to. So, in a way, I guess you could say that high technology or technology grew to a point where it replaced God. It wasn't like this, you know. Industrialization wasn't like, oh yeah, that's good stuff. But let's remember that this was around the time where religion, Christianity, started to die down, because that happened at about the time, I think it was in the 1400s, maybe between the 14 and 1500s. But the point here is trans-humanists, which is of course part of that, but it also goes beyond that, which, you know, is my pet peeve right now. The human is now dependent on this monolith of technology, right? And it has to do with it for pretty much everything. Even right now, you know, for this is a stupid example, but, you know, it's the obvious one is camera, internet, computer, and all the programs that go with it, software, you know, where one meme is computers are witchcraft. That's a good meme. And yeah, you can see that there's, for people who don't understand it, a form of mysticism towards technology. And I think it's even going to grow and grow and grow, because specialists are required more and more to continue this process of modernization, of industrialization, if you can call it that. But really, it's just a continuation of industrialization, just like it's taking a different form. So humans are not using tools as tools anymore. They exalted the tools to a completely different things, which is not godhood exactly. You know, that's going to happen eventually, I'm sure, but it's on the way. So in the meantime, we have tools that are now, how can you say that? They're more than that. They're worth more than a human life. You know, so in a way, I guess you could say they took the place of the human. You know, it's not conviviality anymore to use tools. Now it's required, it's needed, it's completely irrelevant if you work in the current day and age without tools. Even for the most basic of jobs, like being a farmer, for example, you have to use tools, such as the tractor. Old-style, traditional tools, that's not a thing anymore. Even crops themselves they're a thing that were created through the use of these more than tools objects. And even using chemicals that are created in such a way that they're using more than tools. So everything is created together, and tractors, obviously, you know. The problem with cars and with roads is that you have to use tools. That's the catch-22 of the thing, is that even if you're a primalist, you kind of are in a schism, because true primalists, in the end, they're relegated to living as hermits. They create dead, and they're actually in hiding, because you can't really live in the woods and be left scot-free if you're alive, you know. Even if you're dead, actually. But that's a whole other topic, which is, in my opinion, very sad. And yeah, this is a bittersweet smile about this. But, you know, it is the current world, it's the current Western world anyway. In my country, it's just how it works, sadly. Very sadly, very much so. Good. It is good. I like it. I give another example for basic ones. Then I give a final example for city life, which is disgusting. Fuck cities. Lumberjacks. Same thing as farmers. Now, I saw that's not a wordplay. I saw that there was some people really attached to their traditions, and so they're still using saws, but they're more modern. They're better. But the thing with these saws, that are used traditionally, which are better, more durable, and everything, is that they're used to create these specific ways of doing it that require actually the use of those fucking tools. So, the good old axe you could forge is not good enough anymore, even if you want to go traditional and actually make a profit of it in a capitalist society, which is the entire world currently. Even China, yes, even China. Yes, I mean, it's a surprise to nobody that China is capitalist and communist. At this point, it's common knowledge, so that's not even a meme or a red pill, it's just everybody knows. But beside these fringe companies and individuals, chainsaws are a thing, and then you actually have to transport the wood anyway, so what do you use? Well, you're in a place where you got more and more people, and wood is used more and more as a source of fuel, as well as more and more as a source of material we discover over time, of course, more utility for it. So it's always going to be a thing. Well, it's always. I don't know if it's always going to be a thing, but for at least a few generations, I'm sure it's still going to be a thing. As long as the steers are around, there will be use for them, except, decoration and, more importantly, nature. So our last thing is cities, job, any office job, computer, any stores. How do you transport stuff? There you go. What are you selling? How is it made? There you go. It's all a meme, dude. It's all a fucking joke. So, on this, we are stuck on this. And there is one thing is, before I go and rant about transhumanists and how fucking weak they are, just a quick note on what I'm actually talking about and the dependence of people on modernity and technology, is that you had an increase, okay, in population thanks or due, depends on how you see things, to industrialization. First in the countries of origin, obviously, and now in third world countries. The interesting thing about those actually countries that are last and actually finally starting to get up, get to modernity and everything and stop being poor is that they're forced to do that. They are forced. It's not even their choice. Because the only people who chose not to were tribes, and they were they went extinct for the most part. There's probably like 3 or 4 now going around. Maybe a dozen, let's be generous. Living good lives. Good lives? Or fake communities, I don't know. Well, the old way is dead, basically. Anything pre-industrialization does not exist anymore. And everyone who doesn't is kind of pulled towards it. And then, like everyone will be pulled towards what the trans-humanists and would like for humanity, which is complete and utter nonsense. Because you can actually become what you want to be without technology. Unless, obviously, you have cut legs, and cut arms. You have handicaps, which actually they're using. I want to touch upon I've got time now to actually rant about transhumanists. So they're worried about time because, you know, they don't want to take the time to learn how to be better. That's very clear in how they want to go about things. And if you ask them, because they tend to be pretty good at rhetorics, they will try to convince you otherwise. The problem is that the first counter-argument is that using their words against them and actually putting it in a historical context and a historical societal context, which I've attempted to do, like mumbling around, but I hope my point got across, more or less. The second thing again then is using their future envisioned, there you go, their envisioned future against them, against that argument that they are not impatient and they're not manchildren. When you claim that you want to cure death, that you want to extend the lifespan of people to over 100 years of good health, because you want people to be more knowledgeable, because you want people to have more specialties, to live longer, to have better lives and everything. That goes first against the argument that they're not impatient, which I don't even think is a really actual argument. But it speaks about a few different things. First, about their impatience, obviously, as we just said. Second, about the fear of death itself, which is pretty fucking cringe, dude. It's epically cringe. And unbased. And, yeah. Because it won't ever creating immortality is not going to be creating invincibility. So death is always going to be a thing. I don't care. It's just going to increase the fear of death of people who don't take the fucking time to just think, not meditate, because meditating is actually cringe. Just doing things in silence and thinking. I don't know why it's called meditating. Luke Smith has a point when he says it's normal. Yeah, it is. Just when you're not a dopamine addict, I agree it's normal to just think. Meditating is epic cringe. Simple as. Or if you're spiritual, of course, I guess that's kind of understandable. But I'm wondering if it's not a mistranslation. In any event, the point I was trying to make, yes, is death, is the fear of death, which we could make a whole video about it. I'm not sure we need to do that because there's plenty of that out there. I have my own beliefs. I think I pretty clearly said I'm against the fear of death. I think it should be accepted, and all of that. But that's a whole thing. That's a whole philosophical system in itself. I also think that everyone should have their own philosophical system and not look at one and say, "Oh, I want to do that." No, you can just mix and match and see what works very well for you and your peers if you're into the community things, which should be a thing because you're a human being and therefore you're community oriented, whether you like it or not. Which is why actually communism might not be that bad, unless of course you're talking about the countrywide thing. Then it's a big cringe, as shown by history times and times again. So fear of death, that's the thing. Then the fear of time, that's the third thing. And I think that's even more interesting than the fear of death is the fear of time. The passage of time, I think, goes unnoticed and unspoken by a lot of people because it's hard to realize that you fear the passage of time. You can fear growing old, which is a symptom of the fear of time, but fearing growing old is not exactly the source problem. Or the fear of death. The source problem, I think, or I'm actually very much certain of it, is the fear of time. So actually, I think it encompasses pretty much everything the transhumanist is, which is he or she, well, he with a big H then, is fearful of time. In other words, he's epic cringe. Again, I don't know, I like using that word. I know it's a very Zoomer vocabulary, but Zoomer vocabulary is pretty fun to use. And, yeah. We could say it's a symptom of modernity as well. Which you could also go with the disparity between generations, which is growing more and more, rapidly. And then you can also go into the whole debate about how every in-betweens are growing more separated, you know. Okay, poor and the rich, so the generations, skills, people, most obvious one, people. You can argue with that, and I think it will all be negative conclusions. And yeah. The transhumanist is fearful of time, and does not want to make peace with it because it wants to combat it for whatever reason. And I think the reason is that the transhumanist is a coward. And, because if you don't want to improve yourself as a human being, and you want to rely on other things, on technology, mainly high technology, on other systems to do it, what's the fucking point, to actually be better yourself if you can you can use other things that are external, very much external, that are not even remotely human, to be better. First one is the fact that it's backfiring pretty heavily right now. I'm not gonna go with the climate crisis, because it's not really a crisis. And I say it's not a crisis because it has to happen due to all of what we did, of what we're still doing as a race, the human race. Oh, very hippie of me to say that, but yes. Where, to go back on an earlier point I made, is the fusion between the rise of population and the rise of industrialization, is that both are intimately linked, and if you want to cut one off, you have to cut the other off, which is called omnicide. So you can have your idea of who gets to live, who gets to die, but that's a whole other thing, and that's very much unethical, and it's probably not something. It is worse than many genocides, or all genocides, because this is more than a genocide. So if it's the only way to go back to monkey, as one would say, be careful what you wish for, because I don't see any other way at the moment. Because the thing is, if you want to play with that, with people, and transhumanists included, because, it works for them, it's part of the agenda, to go to where they want to be. To be manchildren with a steel brain. Fucking idiots. But you go to a place where, we have to act now. It's now or never. And, it's been now or never for like 20 years now, but whatever. And by the way, it's been shown that Earth will heal pretty fine with the coof. happening. You remember the first weeks, months of the coup, where everything shut down on the world? The planet was like, hey, can finally breathe a bit, everything is fine again. And then the industry started again, and it was like, oh, fuck, we're going back. But yeah, the Earth would be fine. Everything living on it is another story. So yeah, those are two are linked, and then you can't then say, oh, well, generations down the line, we can have less and less people. Like China tried, by the way, but they realized that that's not gonna be a thing if they want the industries and the economy to keep growing, because they think that growing the economy is the most important thing. It's too bad when there won't be any resources left to grow the economy. I think that's going to be a big oof. Which is also why I guess they're starting to invest in taking spacefaring more seriously. Which is fair in that mindset. That's very fair. And I completely understand that they would pursue it. The problem is that if this continues on, even with more technology to fix the problems caused by technology, which is big brain, you have to admit, at some point humanity will crumble. Okay, it's just easy to say. Probably actually go back to monkey through the crumbling of humanity as we know it. Which actually might be fair, because the human is being weaker and weaker generation after generation, due to societal changes, due to technology, due to industrialization. And so Ted Kaczynski was right. Thank you, Uncle Ted. You were right. And now we can see that we fucked up. But again, how to go back, how to stop, probably not actually something anyone will actually want, even the most hardcore fans of Ted Kaczynski. But I think the main thing is Ted maybe has not entertained the idea that it's gonna be a big oof no matter what happens. But hey, take it with a smile, dude. Because it's not gonna happen, they're gonna omnicide everyone. Probably. But no, I just don't see why. They still value life, people, politicians and everything. Which is interesting. They see humans as assets, of course, alright, systems, modern systems created by humans or created due to machines by humans, due to technology. But they're still by humans, so as long as the human is the core of that, you have some value with the human. So that's the problem with trans-humanists then, is that I think they're very much anti-humans. Because if you want to become more than human, to transcend the humanity, well, I think the only way to transcend is better yourself, and then there's spiritual transcendence is one way to call it, but it's still being the better human. You're still human, Trans-humanism in its word is transcendence. But what does it actually mean? Well, when you look at the advocates of trans-humanists, and as well as what technology and trans-humanists talk about, what it brings is not transcendence of humanism, of the human, but more about the post-humanism, what's the world after the humans. What a human is that he's not human anymore. I just don't see it any other way with all that we know, the history of humanity, the future we can predict more or less. Depends on how much you're informed, how much you can do a critical analysis, and how much you can handle the present facts of everything. I don't know if I'm a good predictor. I can predict the future well enough. Probably not. But as it stands now, trans-humanists are kind of pulling, from the shadows, but not really the shadows, because they're very clear about it. But it's just propaganda, you know. It's, oh, it's for a better tomorrow, it's for better health, it's for better humans, it's for better everything, you know, more comfort. Well, let's speak about comfort. Actually, that's a good point, my dude. You want to be more comfortable. I think that's not a good thing. As it stands today, we're very comfortable. So much so that you can bet your ass that you go in the streets around in any town or city, and what you will see in the center of the city is fat fucks everywhere. Especially more if you're in places like England or America, the US. You will see fat fucks absolutely everywhere, and even worse than fat fucks, because, you know, fat. That's one thing you can do there. But morbidly obese. Oh boy. Now that's peak hedonism, dude. But that's besides the point. Besides talking about this trash, the transhumanists will, in its mind, go away with it and would actually point towards these things and these people and these things and say, oh, but we'll avoid that. We won't be like that. Well, you wouldn't be like that in the first place if all this didn't happen, dude. You chased comfort. We chased, rather, comfort. We chased productivity at any cost. We chased the growing of world economies. We created world trading, neoliberals, and false communism, not false communism, my bad boys, capitalism, and all these systems that are codependent and coexist with each other in such a malicious way that the fair in the world is completely, it's not a thing anymore. You know, the individual used to do what was fair. But if you remove the individual and remove the human element from any system, I'm not sure what's the point of being human. So I think at some point the transhumanism will win in that way, is that people will just give up. They will accept that with everything that is and everything that will be, compared to everything that was. It's better now to just accept the gifts of transhumanism than keep going as a human, because it's so miserable to be human in a transhumanist society, which is we're pretty much there anyway. So, woo! Yeah, no, I guess that's what happens when you actually so passionate that you can work on that hundreds of years. Just now they're starting to be pretty much impatient. But I think maybe that's the hope we can have, is that their impatience is going to bite them in the ass very fucking hard. I don't know what it would look like, honestly, so. Besides war or maybe the rising of people, but that wouldn't fucking help anyway. If people rose to revolt, I think that's a false hope. Because it's a crowd of people, it's a group of people, and people, when they act as a crowd, it's pretty cringe, and it doesn't help anyone anywhere. Je put some oil today. Well, what? I'm unsure what is there to say. Transhumanists are scum. There's no going back, and the way forward is pretty terrible as well. So that's the fate of Western civilization then. Luckily, that's not the end. Because if the Western civilization is the civilization of the entire world, then yes, sure, it's the end. But it isn't, because we're not alone, luckily. don't look at China and India. They're pretty bad anyway. Third world countries, I don't know, they're pretty bad too, because they think we're the best, and they don't see the flaws, and they don't see the writings on the wall, and they probably didn't take the time to study history because they have, other things to worry about, like surviving and getting better, and then pursuing a dream that isn't a dream but more of a nightmare in disguise. And that's the main thing, though, is that comfort is not an amazing thing. It's a good thing in small quantities, much like everything else. Balancing all things, that's actually not a meme, that's actually real. I'm sure a lot of us know about this. The problem is, how often do we actually apply that? Not that often. And especially worse as a society. It's completely unbalanced and it gets worse every time. When I talked about the growing dependency, I'm not sure that's the word, the growing canyon between, growing fissure, why not, between two things. That's not very balanced. That's growing extremes. You can even see that in the political debates. Same thing. It's everywhere. It's the same thing. The lack of balance, the rising of extremes. So what is that but the manifestation in multiple forms of a source problem that was brought about by, first, industrialization, and second, humanists who became trans-humanists. Because let's be honest, all this wouldn't have happened if you didn't have good thinkers and wannabe sucky philosophers suck the dick of governments and royalty to think, we're gonna be better. Maybe it wasn't so bad to be a farmer back then. Now I quickly talked about the schism of the pre-industrialized in modern societies. But it's really the schism of anyone. It's just more prevalent in pre-industrialists. They're suffering, dude. If you see a pre-industrialist, send him a gorilla or a picture of a monkey. You'll be happy. They need help. Send me pictures of monkeys, please. Thank you. The first subject I wrote earlier today, which might be an interesting thing to write about, which I will eventually try to write about it when it will be appropriate. It is called exaltation through solitude. I just have to define what exaltation means in this, because I can't even remember what it means. I didn't write it down. I'm dumb, dude. Now you have to choose what you want to be. You want to be a spectator of a dying world, which will either be overtaken by religious zealots from Islam, but then that won't change the fact that trans-humanism won. Do you really think that? Imagine if Islamists were to conquer the world or any huge part of Western society, which they might as well do in Western world eventually. that they wouldn't use the tools, or the more than tools, things that brought them that victory. You're using the tools of a civilization against them. You're still using those tools that are more than tools in the end. So you end up them, unless you can somehow purge and think, oh, we won't use technology. But that's what I don't get, is that they're already using it. So they're fucked as well. So even if they achieve their goals, they're fucked anyway. It's all the same as Christianity. That's what I think. They were all fucked in that sense. When I said earlier, like, oh, but there's hope because there's some people who will do better, you know. I don't think so. I think either they will succumb or they will isolate themselves. Maybe the real winners are Korea. Think about it. No, they're the same. Yeah, no, I don't see it. Honestly, I think at the end of the day, at the end of time, you just have to ride the wave of what is good in the current life. And if you want to try to change things, go ahead, but sorry, buddy, when 99% of the entire world has been duped, it's going to be pretty hard to do anything, you know, besides spreading the world and then having that fatalistic sense, and then you can't even go back anyway. Who would want to go back? Even if I were to convince you, even if I convince you, or if anyone who's anti-trans-humanist would happen to convince you, who is, as a growing human, as a human being, you know, not a sociopath, not a psychopath, who would advocate for the immediate course change of going back? Because immediacy still translates to what I've been talked about, what I've talked about before, which was omnicide and the dismantlement of industries. Because you can't sustain anything otherwise. That's true, if you can't sustain it. Well, look, I'm not a big philosopher. I'm not a philosopher, in fact. At the end of the day, at the end of time, I like using that, that's a strange thing to say. I exist in a world where existence seemed to me to have been meant to understand not itself, but time. Because if you understand time, then you can, by extracting some of the knowledge acquired, understand your existence itself. Well, that's the whole thing. I wrote about it, actually. It's more like thoughts. I haven't developed it because I don't know how I can take it, in what direction I could take it. But it's on my website if you're interested, where I theorize quickly enough that nature exists, and we exist as products of nature with a capitalized N, as proxies of it to understand the meaning of nature, of time. Because nature exists within time, and nature wants to understand the concept, the big one, the biggest one, which I still think and always will think. Time. Yes. Such an interesting concept. I mean, of course, it's more of a concept. It's primordial force. It's the primordial force on which nature is, you know, a child of time. You know, you could say, oh, you know, you have sects, and there's a sect that we say, oh, children of time. You know, that's a fun name. Then you have children of nature. Also, those are hippies. It's still a sect, though. But I think you can go beyond. You know what my first painting, or print rather, because I'm not rich, I'm poor actually, is to, in my houses. It's not this. This is a good web series. You should watch it, by the way. I translated about 20 episodes in French. Interface. Very good. From Umami. Very, very good. No, the first was, I'm not sure how you pronounce it because it's in Hebrew. Well, I think it was in Hebrew. Yeah, it's the Old Testament, so yes. Asbeel. I don't know how to pronounce it, but you know, the angel called the angel of ruin. I thought it was one of the angels to illustrate the Gregory in the Old Testament. Just that it's nice to call it the angel of ruin, even if it's not canon to say it. How it is interesting because in the Old Testament, as I remember what I read about it, because that's the only part not the only part I was interested in, but I was really interested in because of that painting actually. Is the Gregory were led astray by Asbeel, and they went to a period of decadence, which, you know, lost the Gregory to time eventually. And that's pretty much how it came to be, you know, they went away and did things with humans, you know, cool, lewd, not very Christian, Old Testament wise things, not very Jewish friendly things, you could say. But you know, they envisioned morality in that way back then. Yeah, I have a whole topic about morality, modernity, and the remnants of the old world, which still try to cling to a dying, corrupted, from the get-go, morality. So, one could say, no, that's another topic, but yeah, I like the angel of ruin. If you would categorize me, I mean, I talked lengthily, very much so, over the years, until I put a name on it, and then still I do. And I built everything, I built my philosophy around it is ruin. Oh. So I'm looking at the painting. I just profoundly believe that all I said. Well, profoundly, I don't know if it's profoundly believed, but it's certainly firm. But the good thing is, whatever happens, ruin will take place. Because time exists. And then you can talk about entropy. I was going to say chaos, but that's just a part of entropy. But you know, entropy That's the thing. You could say that entropy. I think entropy supersedes ruin, but ruin is. Well, I'm not sure actually. I wonder if they wouldn't coexist. Well, not coexist, but they wouldn't exist in parallel. Or maybe just ruin, I think, is just another word for entropy at that point. Because ruin is not the end of time, but just in the end, it's just the end of nature. That's ruin. Entropy is. I'm not sure actually. Is entropy the end of time, or is it the end of nature as well, or is it just the end of matter? I don't fucking know. Because if it's the end of matter, ruin might take place. But right now, in my mind, what I've declared ruin as a concept is the end of nature. So when it comes to cult, you could put me on the sons of ruin, because that's what I actually believe in. And it brings me some solace to know that it will end. A lot of actually. You know, one might say that, it's hypocritical, or it's weak to believe but in such concepts of fatality, because you're not trying to better yourself and everything. But the problem is that it's kind of not taking into account everything else. You're just taking one point, which is the starting point, but just throwing everything away, except that, the fatality of existence and of nature. Because that's how it's going to happen anyway. That ruin will take place no matter what happens. So first off, fatality, you can't escape it. Second, the idea behind ruin is that one of the core ideas is that it's based off multiple philosophies, if you want to go this way. One of them, as cringe as it might be for some, Stoicism. However, before you go, fuck you, Stoicism, fucking cocksucker, or piece of shit, or whatever. It's not exactly Stoicism, because I actually think Stoicism is kind of cringe. Because it's talking about giving to society and everything, except, in the modern age, doesn't really work anymore. But that's fine because it's ancient philosophy. It's not applicable anymore. And eventually, the entire thing of all systems of philosophy actually doesn't matter anymore, because the human won't exist anymore. That's the vision of trans-humanists, by the way. This counts. Anti-humanists. That's what they are. They're not trans and post-humanists. They're just anti-humanists. That's just what they are. Fuck them. You actually, in my ideals too, is that you still want to better yourself because you want to spectate the passage of time. You want to take part in life. You want to take part in the act of living through nature. One could say, go through what nature intended. But again, I believe that nature intended to understand time, and so you know, I'm not sure there's a better way to understand time than to live through time. However, where I differ with people pro-immortality or pro-life prolongations is that death is an integral part of nature and life, and is actually very much in line with ruin. So yeah, and that's the thing is that when I said, oh, you know, immortality won't bring immutability, then there's some people who are like, oh, but what about upholding your consciousness? Well, first of all, what the fuck do you think? What? No. What? No, until proven otherwise, it's just impossible. And considering what we know of the brain today, and how slow the progress has been, and what we envision of how complex the human brain and the human is overall, oh boy. Woo, you're sure gonna get what you wish. Well, extinction is not imminent, of course, but extinction might as well happen before we knew that. Weird, very high-tech bullshit that some people wish for. If you think it's going to be your generation, you first off, no, as I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm wrong, you know. But you know what? Even if I was wrong, even if in 10 years, in 20 years, however long, you could upload your consciousness, you still have the philosophical idea of, is this really you? Is it really consciousness and everything? Stuff that you can't really answer. And even if you could answer that, it would not get rid of the idea of ruin, of entropy, of the decay of everything. The idea of that is that at the end of the day, at the end of time, the end wins. The end. And I find some peace in that. Because life in itself is a form of entropy, because it's birthed from chaos, you know. It's birthed from said entropy, then it forms into order, and then order must decay into entropy, back into what it was, which is a stable form of fucking whatever. I don't know. That is basically science. I think it's pretty cool. Scary, but it is as it is. It exists as it exists, and it will be as it will be. And you know, it's an interestingly healthy way to look at things when you're not taking everything negatively. You know how I smiled all throughout this video? I think it's indicative enough of the fact that all of what has been said can be taken positively, because in the end, for the individual, he can still go be a human being in nature if he really wants to, which is what I want to do. And who say, and you know, communities are still a thing. Small villages, small communities are still a thing. And if you really want to be human, those are the place to be. No, not cities, because cities are absolute cringe and should not exist. And if they didn't exist, we wouldn't have this whole problem. But cities are more of a symptom of industrialization than anything else. So yeah, epic cringe, trans-humanists, they should not exist, and industrialization was a mistake. Prepare mentally for the end of humanity, and most importantly, the end of all that is in nature. Okay, cool, thanks. I will finish this delicious tobacco, which is one of things, because you can still enjoy life, you know. So otherwise, you know, in suffering, you can bring out more of the enjoyment. You know, it's not hedonism, fuck you, because you're still suffering. Hedonism is the incessant pursuit of pleasure, which, funnily enough, brings about suffering, except the other issue here is that what's the word? Unthought suffering and indecisive suffering, you know, suffering without any purpose, for the sake of seeking pleasure. It's just going to bring you less and less pleasure and more suffering. So that's the trap of hedonism, boys. Don't do it. It's bad. It's very bad. And if you do it, and you still do it, you deserve what happens to you. No, actually, constructive suffering. In which way? Constructive suffering, as in suffering with a purpose, so that you can bring to yourself and your people, if you want, a form of fulfillment, a form of comfort that cannot be found in incessant pursuit of pleasure, which then brings about a strong, not emphatic or not infinite source of pleasure, but very much a strong source of pleasure in very healthy, in good ways, the material ways, spiritual ways, and I don't want to say sexual ways, because sex is actually cringe, and I don't like it. No, I just don't like sex. But if it does bring fulfillment, of course, you know, it's a thing. You know, you need to have consenting parties, all of that good stuff. Community, humanity, good shit. Of course, at the end of the day, you still have to accept the end. And I think that's what makes everything more potent, is that you accept, you know that the end will happen. So enjoy, you know, suffer, but in the way that you suffer, you still enjoy life, and then you can enjoy the pleasures that come from life. Even, you know, in suffering, there you still enjoy what there is. It's a very, very weird way of wiring the brain, but that's what has been done for many years, until some people convinced themselves in their young teens that they didn't need to grow up anymore because technology would do it for them. Yeah, trans-humanists are manchildren. They're very... You know, eventually we have children ruling the world. And they won't even be calling themselves children. They will consider themselves wise. And they will be considered too that way, because of the way the exponential curves rise. It actually goes that way too for technology. The differential in societies over time, and how different the human is since industrialization compared to how it was right at the point of industrialization until the prehistoric humans. It's going to be. So because of that chaos left and that vacuum of wisdom, that, you know, not as much or ultimately nothing that we knew can apply to the humans, then those children will be the wise ones, because they will know what's better, which is more technology to fix problems created by technology. Yeah, that will definitely work out well, sure. But anyway, I'm repeating myself. So yes, keep enjoying life however you can, and if you're handicapped, trans-humanists are alive. Okay, don't let them sell you the idea that bionic members will save you. It's a cool stuff. That's a very cool idea from technology. But you know, in the first place, one might make the argument that well, you wouldn't have all these problems if we didn't have technology in the first place. Do you know? So how did dismembered people do it back then? Well, besides the fact that most of them would actually die, handicapped people from birth, or you know, they had a relegated place, special place in their communities, which you know they don't even have anymore. Cool shit, dude. They're very well thought out. We totally kept up with the level of progress we made technologically. What absolute cringe this world is, and I have no hope whatsoever for it. So go live your best days outside of the modern systems as much as you can. But of course, if it brings you enjoyment, you can still use it. But just be responsible. Just be a real, mature human being. Don't be a manchildren. Don't be a trans-humanist. Don't be a hedonist. Don't be fat. Well, don't be obese, because if you're fat, you know, there's probably many reasons why you are. But medicine is also a symptom of many problems. Luckily, never mind, what fact. But it's fine. I think it's fine. Maybe it's how it should be. Maybe that's the end line. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's poverty. Maybe nature is only here. It's only on Earth. And try to understand time, and if we can do it in time, good. Nature we have the answer. And I don't know what could be done with it, but if it's just the pursuit of knowledge, then perhaps there's no point in it. Perhaps it was just to make peace with it, or actually maybe nature is just a herald of time, and time actually tries to understand itself. I don't know, you can make many theories about it. It's a very interesting topic, but could debate for it for ages. Not for eternity, because perhaps it doesn't exist. Au revoir.